When people talk about miracles, they usually mean events that break the normal course of nature. A person rises from the dead, water turns into wine, the sun stands still in the sky. These are not just unusual or rare, they're supposed to be violations of natural law. And that's where David Hume, the Scottish philosopher of the 18th century, stepped in with one of the most famous critiques of all time. He didn't just say, miracles don't happen. He said the very way people argue for them is flawed from the ground up. What makes Hume's case so powerful is how straightforward it is. He wasn't trying to dismiss people's experiences out of arrogance or wave away testimonies with cynicism. He was applying the same logic we use every single day without even thinking. When we evaluate claims, we weigh them against our background knowledge of the world. And miracles, by definition, are the least likely events you could imagine. So if you're going to believe one happened, the evidence has to be stronger than the massive improbability stacked against it. Hume's starting point is simple. Natural laws aren't just guesses, they're based on constant experience. Every single day, gravity works the same way. Fire burns, water flows downhill, people don't come back from death. These patterns are so consistent that we rely on them for everything. Building bridges, flying planes, cooking dinner. The entire structure of science, engineering, and medicine rests on the regularity of nature. Now, compare that to a miracle claim. Let's say someone in the ancient world claimed their neighbor came back from the dead. On one side, you have a mountain of evidence from constant experience telling you people who die stay dead. On the other side, you have a single testimony, written or spoken, that says otherwise. Which side should reason favor? For Hume, the answer is obvious. The weight of regular experience massively outweighs the isolated claim. And here's the key point. This doesn't even require proving miracles can't happen. It only shows that it is always more rational to doubt the testimony than to accept the miracle. Why? Because human testimony is fallible. People lie, exaggerate, misremember, or get deceived. But natural law has never once been observed to break. So when the two conflict, the rational choice is to trust the law, not the story. This is where Hume draws an even sharper line. He says a miracle is defined as a violation of the laws of nature. But the only reason we believe in laws of nature is because of our uniform and consistent experience of them. That means, by definition, the evidence for natural law is always stronger than any single claim against it. Think about it in terms of probability. Which is more likely, that the laws of nature broke just this once, or that the person reporting the event made a mistake? If you hear someone say they saw a man fly unaided, you have to choose. Is it more probable that every single experience of gravity across all human history was overturned, or that one person got it wrong? Hume's point is that the balance always tips toward doubt, not because he's closed-minded, but because this is how reason works. We proportion belief to evidence. The bigger the claim, the bigger the burden of proof. And since miracles make the biggest claims possible, they need overwhelming evidence. Yet in reality, the evidence is always underwhelming. Another major part of Hume's critique is his analysis of testimony. He notes that humans are often unreliable narrators. We get things wrong, even in everyday life, misidentifying faces, mishearing words, misremembering events. And when it comes to extraordinary stories, we're even more prone to embellishment. Hume points out that miracle reports often come from ignorant and barbarous nations, not as an insult, but as an observation that less critical cultures are more likely to accept marvels without skepticism. He also noticed that miracle claims tend to flourish where they serve a purpose, to inspire devotion, to validate a prophet, or to control a community. That doesn't mean people are always lying, but it does mean the conditions are ripe for exaggeration and manipulation. Even in modern times, we see how unreliable testimony can be. Eyewitness accounts of crimes, for example, are notoriously shaky, even when people are doing their best to tell the truth. If that's true for ordinary events, how much more cautious should we be with claims of supernatural ones? For Hume, this isn't a reason to dismiss people's sincerity. It's a reason to weigh testimony carefully and recognize its limits. Hume also makes a point about competing miracle claims. Every religion has its own set of miracle stories. Christianity has resurrection accounts, Islam has stories of Muhammad's night journey, Hinduism has tales of gods manifesting in human form, Buddhism has legends of miraculous feats. If miracles are real, then these stories should reinforce one another. But they don't. They cancel each other out. If you accept the Christian miracles, you'd have to reject the Islamic ones because they point to different truths. If you accept the Hindu miracles, you'd have to reject the Buddhist ones. Each faith uses miracle claims to validate itself, but since they can't all be right, the rational conclusion is that they're all unreliable. This is one of Hume's sharpest insights. Miracles are used not to prove a universal truth, but to defend conflicting dogmas. And once you see that, it becomes clear that miracles don't establish anything. They just reflect the culture and belief system of the people telling the stories. Finally, Hume underscores the psychological side of miracles. He notes that humans have a natural love of wonder. We're drawn to the unusual, the dramatic, the supernatural. Stories of the extraordinary spread faster than ordinary facts because they excite the imagination. A tale of someone healed by medicine is dull. A tale of someone healed by divine power captures attention and devotion. This human tendency means miracle stories will always arise, even without any real event behind them. People exaggerate, people misinterpret coincidences, people invent. Over time, these stories become traditions, and traditions harden into doctrines. By the time they're written down in scriptures, they're treated as sacred history, but they started as human stories. For Hume, this explains why miracle claims are so common, but actual miracles are so absent. The supply of wonder in human imagination is endless, while the supply of genuine violations of nature is zero. The irrationality lies not in telling stories, but in mistaking stories for evidence. One of the most powerful aspects of Hume's critique is how it anticipates modern probability theory. He lived before statistics became formalized, but his reasoning lines up perfectly with the principles we now use to evaluate evidence. Hume argued that when two explanations compete, the rational choice is to favor the one with the highest probability. So when someone claims a miracle occurred, the odds we have to weigh are massive. On one side, we have billions of consistent experiences that confirm natural laws. On the other, we have a single report that those laws were broken. Mathematically speaking, the burden of proof isn't just high, it's astronomical. For example, if a person reports seeing a friend walk on water, you have two possible explanations. Either nature's laws suspended themselves for this one case, or the person made a mistake. Which outcome is more probable? Even without hard numbers, Hume's reasoning shows the rational answer is always the second option. People misperceive events all the time, but nature has never been confirmed to stop working. This way of thinking doesn't dismiss miracle claims out of prejudice. It just applies the same reasoning we use in everyday life. If your phone falls from a table and then you're told it floated mid-air before hitting the ground, your first thought wouldn't be that gravity stopped. You'd think the person missaw, exaggerated, or joked. That's proportional reasoning, and Hume insisted it must apply to miracle claims as well. Hume also dismantles the idea that miracles can be used as proof of divine authority. In many religions, miracles are presented as evidence that a prophet is truly sent by God. But Hume points out the flaw. Miracle claims are exactly the kind of evidence that are least reliable. If a teacher performs a supposed miracle, followers might conclude that what they teach must be true. But what if someone else in another religion performs a miracle too? Their teachings contradict the first teacher. Do we accept both? If not, how do we decide which miracle was real? Hume's insight here is devastating, because miracles can be claimed by anyone. And because different religions use them to support incompatible doctrines, they can't serve as a universal foundation for truth. If anything, they undermine each other. A miracle that supports one faith is evidence against another. This shows why miracles are a weak foundation for belief. Instead of establishing certainty, they create confusion. Rationally, if a claim of proof leads to contradictions rather than clarity, it isn't proof at all. It's a symptom of irrational belief systems trying to bolster themselves with spectacle. Another area where Hume was ahead of his time is in understanding human psychology. He argued that people are often motivated to spread miracle stories because of the pleasure of surprise. Our minds are wired to pay attention to the unusual. We gossip about strange events. We share shocking stories. We exaggerate to entertain. This explains why miracle reports spread so easily. A story about an ordinary recovery from illness won't travel far, but a story about someone cured by a prayer or relic will spark attention. Over time, the retelling amplifies details, adding layers of drama until the original event is unrecognizable. Hume's point is that this natural love of wonder should make us cautious. If we know humans are prone to exaggeration, then miracle claims should be treated with even more skepticism than ordinary ones. Yet in religion, the opposite happens. The more extraordinary the story, the more it's celebrated. That's a reversal of rational thinking. Modern psychology backs this up. Cognitive biases like confirmation bias, pattern recognition, and the tendency to seek agency in random events all play roles in why people report miracles. Our brains are not neutral recording devices. They're meaning-making machines that prefer dramatic explanations. Hume didn't have the science, but he understood the pattern intuitively. Hume also addressed a crucial objection. What if the evidence for a miracle is overwhelming? Suppose thousands of people witness an event, all reporting the same thing. Wouldn't that tip the balance? His answer is subtle. He didn't say it's impossible, but he said we must still weigh probabilities carefully. If 1,000 people testify that the sun stood still, the rational response is to ask whether mass error is more probable than the laws of astronomy being suspended. And given what we know about collective psychology, the possibility of error is higher than the breaking of natural law. Crowd dynamics, shared expectations, and social pressures can produce mass misperceptions. We see this even today with phenomena like mass hysteria or collective illusions. So Hume isn't saying no number of witnesses could ever matter. He's saying the probability of mistake, deception, or exaggeration will always outweigh the probability of a miracle, unless the evidence for the event is so overwhelming that its falsehood would be more miraculous than the miracle itself. That's the standard he set, and by that measure, no miracle claim in history has ever passed. Finally, Hume ties his critique together by reminding us of what rational belief requires. It isn't about absolute certainty, but proportional confidence. We don't need to prove miracles impossible to doubt them. We only need to show that the alternatives are far more probable. This is what makes his argument so resilient. It doesn't depend on hostility toward religion or dismissing personal experiences. It rests on the same principle that governs rational life in general. We trust the regular over the irregular, the consistent over the anecdotal, the repeatable over the unrepeatable. That principle has only grown stronger with time. Science, medicine, and technology all flourish because they follow Hume's standard. They rely on repeatable evidence, not one-off claims. And when miracle claims are tested under those conditions, they fail every time. Hume's logic leaves us with a simple but powerful conclusion. The rational position is always to doubt miracle reports, not because we're cynical, but because that's what it means to proportion belief to evidence. It's the same standard we use everywhere else, and there's no reason to abandon it just because the word miracle is involved. Hume's framework becomes even more striking when you apply it to modern miracle claims. Unlike in the 18th century, today we live in a world full of cameras, scientific instruments, and instant communication. If miracles truly occurred, we'd expect to see them recorded, measured, and verified. But what do we actually see? We see miracle claims that shrink under scrutiny. Healing events are often explained later by natural recovery, misdiagnosis, or selective reporting. Apparitions appear only to small groups without clear documentation. Claims of divine intervention in sports games, natural disasters, or wars are always anecdotal, never backed by solid evidence. The pattern fits exactly what Hume described. Miracles are claimed where they're least verifiable. They thrive in uncertainty, in places where investigation is weak. The moment tools of science or reliable record-keeping enter the picture, the miracles vanish. That's not what we'd expect if the laws of nature were actually being suspended, but it's exactly what we'd expect if miracle claims were products of human error, exaggeration, or imagination. Take modern faith-healing ministries as an example. Large rallies feature dramatic testimonies of the sick being cured. People throw away crutches, claim their pain is gone, or say they've been set free from illness. To an excited crowd, these moments feel powerful and convincing. But when doctors follow up, the results collapse. Many people later discover their condition hasn't changed. Some feel temporary relief due to adrenaline or the placebo effect, only to relapse later. Others misinterpret gradual improvements or misdiagnoses as sudden cures. And in high-profile cases, investigations have revealed outright fraud, planted actors, manipulated testimonies, hidden earpieces feeding preachers information. Hume didn't know about placebo effects or modern fraud investigations, but his logic predicted this perfectly. If a healing truly broke natural law, it would withstand scrutiny, not evaporate under it. The fact that miracle healings always fall apart on closer inspection isn't a surprise. It's exactly what rational analysis expects. We can also look at claimed miracles in places of worship. For example, statues that supposedly weep blood or oil. Pilgrims flock to these sites, convinced they're witnessing the supernatural. Yet time and again, when scientists analyze the substance, it turns out to be animal blood, rust, or condensation. The psychological power of such claims is enormous. People want to believe they've seen a sign. They tell friends and family, who repeat the story. Before long, the claim becomes part of local tradition, resistant to correction, even when exposed as fraud. Hume anticipated this too. He argued that the love of wonder and the social rewards of believing in miracles will always outpace rational skepticism. People feel special when they think they've seen the extraordinary. Communities strengthen their bonds around shared marvels. But none of that makes the claims rational. It only makes them socially sticky. Another modern example is near-death experiences. Some people who survive cardiac arrest report floating outside their bodies, seeing lights, or encountering divine beings. Believers often point to these accounts as evidence of the supernatural. But once again, Hume's logic applies. Which is more probable, that the laws of biology were suspended and consciousness separated from the body, or that the brain under stress created vivid hallucinations? Neuroscience increasingly supports the second explanation. Oxygen deprivation, chemical surges, and neurological misfiring can all produce experiences that feel more real than reality. That fits the evidence far better than assuming natural law was overturned. Hume would say the rational conclusion is obvious. Human brains under extreme conditions are known to generate strange experiences. No need to leap to supernatural explanations. Near-death experiences, like other miracle claims, fit into patterns we already understand. The miracle interpretation is always the least probable. Finally, consider the claim that modern miracles happen in ways science simply can't measure. This is a common defense. When no evidence appears, believers argue the miracle was beyond science. But Hume's case dismantles this excuse too. If a miracle leaves no trace, produces no measurable change, and can't be distinguished from coincidence or imagination, then what exactly are we calling a miracle? At that point, the word becomes meaningless. A claim that can't be tested isn't a claim about reality, it's just a story or belief. Hume's reasoning forces us to ask, what standard of evidence would be enough? And once you answer honestly, you realize no miracle in history has ever come close to meeting that standard. Not ancient stories, not medieval legends, not modern reports. The pattern is the same: high improbability, low evidence, human testimony, and cultural reinforcement. That's why the rational response, every single time, is doubt. Miracles have never just been about evidence. They've always played a role in power and authority. Hume understood this dynamic clearly. He saw that miracle stories were often tied to the interests of religious institutions or political movements. A miracle wasn't just a story, it was a tool to legitimize leaders and to consolidate control. Think of how many religions anchor their authority in a foundational miracle. For Christianity, it's the resurrection. For Islam, it's the revelation of the Quran and Muhammad's night journey. For Hinduism, countless divine manifestations establish legitimacy. These aren't just decorative stories. They are the foundation upon which the authority of the faith rests. Hume's reasoning reveals why this is irrational. Authority built on miracle claims is only as strong as the evidence for the miracle. And since that evidence is always weak, the authority is built on sand. What actually sustains it isn't proof, but repetition, tradition, and the weight of cultural expectation. In other words, miracles function less as demonstrations of truth and more as instruments of influence. Sociologically, miracles also serve as a binding force within communities. When a group believes a miracle has taken place, it creates a shared identity. People feel chosen, set apart, validated. The miracle becomes a story that reinforces group cohesion. But notice, none of this depends on the miracle being real. Anthropologists have studied how rituals and shared stories build social bonds. A miracle, whether true or not, serves this same function. It's a narrative anchor that gives people a sense of purpose. Hume saw through this. He understood that miracles survive not because they're rationally justified, but because they're socially useful. This is why miracle stories persist even after being debunked. Once a story is woven into the identity of a group, evidence against it doesn't erase it. People cling to the miracle because to let it go would mean loosening their grip on the community itself. That's not rational belief, that's social loyalty. And Hume's critique strips away the illusion by showing the actual mechanism at work. Miracles also reveal the human tendency toward confirmation bias. Believers interpret events in ways that reinforce their expectations. If someone recovers after prayer, it's proof of divine healing. If they don't, it's said to be part of a mysterious plan. Either way, the framework is never challenged. Hume would argue this is precisely why miracle claims should be viewed with skepticism, because they are constructed in a way that can't be falsified. No outcome is ever treated as disconfirming. That makes the belief system circular. It feeds itself regardless of what happens. Contrast this with rational inquiry. In science, a hypothesis must be testable and disprovable. If the evidence contradicts it, the hypothesis is abandoned or revised. Miracles never submit to this standard. They remain unfalsifiable, propped up by reinterpretation and rationalization. Hume's brilliance lies in pointing out that the rational course of action is to dismiss any claim that cannot, in principle, be tested. We also need to recognize the historical role of miracles in controlling populations. Leaders throughout history have invoked miracles to inspire obedience or quell dissent. A king blessed by divine signs appears untouchable. A prophet who performs wonders cannot be challenged. A church that claims relics with miraculous powers gains influence over believers' lives. Hume dissected this dynamic with surgical precision. He noted that miracle claims often appear in times and places where skepticism is weak and where the benefits of belief flow to those in power. The miracle doesn't stand on its own. It exists to support a structure of authority. And because questioning the miracle also means questioning the structure, doubt is often suppressed. The irrationality here is clear. A belief system that relies on miracle stories for legitimacy isn't grounded in evidence, it's grounded in manipulation. That doesn't mean every believer is cynical. Many sincerely accept the stories. But sincerity doesn't turn irrational claims into rational ones. It just shows how effective the system is at using miracles to protect itself. Finally, Hume's critique remains so enduring because it captures the essence of rational skepticism in one principle. The wise person proportions belief to evidence. This isn't just about miracles, it's about everything. We don't accept extraordinary claims without extraordinary proof. We don't suspend the laws of probability because a story excites us. Hume forces us to hold miracle claims to the same standard we'd apply anywhere else. If a car mechanic tells you he fixed your engine with a spell, you'd laugh. If a doctor says your broken leg healed overnight because of divine intervention, you'd ask for x-rays. But when ancient texts say water turned into wine, people suspend the standard. Hume insists that's irrational. And he's right. The conclusion is unavoidable. Miracles fail as evidence because they are always less probable than the possibility of error in reporting. They persist not because they're reasonable, but because they're useful, comforting, or socially enforced. Hume showed us how to strip away the illusions and see miracle claims for what they are, stories that collapse under the weight of rational scrutiny. The enduring relevance of Hume's critique lies in how adaptable it is. His principle, that belief must be proportioned to evidence, is as useful in evaluating miracle claims today as it was in the 18th century. Think about the modern world. Endless streams of information, constant exposure to claims, from conspiracy theories to pseudoscience. Hume's framework cuts through the noise. Miracle claims haven't disappeared. They've simply shifted form. Healing crusades are live-streamed. Videos of supposed angel sightings spread online. Rumors of supernatural events circulate on social media. Yet every single time these claims are investigated, they evaporate under scrutiny. The evidence never rises above anecdote. Hume gives us the intellectual tool to handle this. Always ask, what's more probable? That nature has been suspended, or that humans are mistaken, misled, or exaggerating? When you apply this consistently, the answer is always the same. Error and bias are far more common than the suspension of natural law. And because of that, miracle claims remain as irrational today as they were in Hume's time. Another reason Hume's argument still matters is because of the moral weight attached to miracles. Religions often use miracle claims to demand obedience or validate doctrines. Believers are told that because a miracle happened, the teachings attached to it must be true. But Hume exposed the flaw. If the foundation is weak, everything built on it is unstable. Consider how often miracles are used as proof of divine love or divine judgment. A survivor of a disaster might say they were saved by God, while others who died were simply not chosen. But this is irrational on two levels. First, because survival can be explained by natural causes. Second, because the logic itself is incoherent. If one person's survival is miraculous, then why not the deaths? Why isn't the larger tragedy seen as divine cruelty? Hume's critique clears away the fog. By showing that miracle claims are always less probable than natural explanations, he also undermines the authority they're used to claim. This doesn't just protect rational thinking, it protects people from manipulation cloaked in the language of the supernatural. What makes Hume's case even more powerful is that it aligns with scientific reasoning. Science doesn't deny the possibility of rare events. It simply requires evidence that can be tested, repeated, and confirmed. If someone claims a new particle exists, scientists demand experiments. If the experiments can't be reproduced, the claim collapses. Miracles, by their nature, can't meet this standard. They're one-time events, unrepeatable, untestable, and usually unverifiable. That's why they remain in the realm of story rather than fact. And this distinction matters. Science advances because it weeds out error through repetition. Religion clings to miracle claims precisely because they can't be tested. They exist outside the realm of correction. Hume recognized this gap before modern science made it explicit. His insistence on proportional belief is the same principle that underpins every scientific discovery. And when you compare the track record, the contrast is clear. Science has built medicine, technology, and knowledge that tangibly improve lives. Miracle claims have contributed nothing to reliable understanding. That fact alone shows where rational confidence belongs. There's also a psychological freedom that comes with embracing Hume's critique. When you let go of miracle claims, you're no longer held hostage by extraordinary stories that demand blind acceptance. You can appreciate human resilience, coincidence, and natural wonder without forcing them into supernatural categories. Consider how liberating it is to see recovery from illness not as an arbitrary gift of divine power, but as the result of medicine, biology, and the body's own capacity to heal. Or how awe-inspiring it is to view the cosmos not as a stage for suspensions of natural law, but as a vast, consistent system that we're slowly coming to understand. The rejection of miracles doesn't diminish wonder, it deepens it, because it roots awe in reality rather than illusion. Hume's logic invites us to shift our focus from hoping for supernatural interventions to engaging with the real world, and in doing so, it encourages responsibility. If problems aren't solved by miracles, then they must be solved by us. That's a far more empowering message than waiting for the laws of nature to bend. In the end, Hume's logical case against miracles is not about cynicism, but about clarity. It doesn't sneer at people's hopes or mock their traditions. It simply asks us to live by a principle we already use in every other area of life. Trust the consistent, doubt the extraordinary, when the evidence is weak, and never abandon reason for the sake of a story. That's why Hume's argument has stood the test of time. Miracles haven't disappeared, but neither has the reasoning that dismantles them. Each new generation faces the same choice: believe improbable stories or proportion belief to evidence. And every time we choose the latter, we strengthen the foundation of rational thought. The brilliance of Hume's critique is its simplicity. A miracle claim always competes with the vast uniformity of natural law. And when the evidence is weighed, natural law always wins. That's not just philosophy. It's the bedrock of rational living. And it leaves us with the unmistakable conclusion: miracle claims may inspire, but they never justify, because the rational mind recognizes that extraordinary stories without extraordinary proof don't reveal truth. They reveal only the power of belief.